Together it matters. Let's take a nice deep breath together and begin the ceremony for you. So I'm going to invite Meg Rayne up, and I just want to say briefly that Meg and I have been friends for, 30 years. She's a peacenik, she's a songstress, she's a music director, and she's a dear, dear friend, and she's going to sing a beautiful song by Heather Moon. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We turn this on and all that. See, oh, no, here it goes. Hello? Hello, yes. And this has to go on too. That's wrong. Oh, so when Paula asked me to sing, and this song in particular, my eyebrows went up. I've sung a lot of hard-hitting songs, and this one really hits home. But I just want to say how grateful I am that we have hearts, that our hearts are really aligned to bring peace and justice to this planet and to our world. So this is called How Many More? But before I begin, this is my dear friend, Christine Malvika, and she's going to play with me. So. A is for allegiance. It's what you gotta pledge every morning to the flag. And B is for bravery. In the home of the brave, it's what you gotta be. Because C is for children. Hiding in the cabinets, the trenches of the classroom. And D is for drill. And this is not a drill, no, this is not a drill. And how many more? How many more? How many babies in the ground? How many friends? And how many more? How many more?
much. You know, never underestimate the importance of relationships in your community. And I am just so blessed that Mayor Sean Reardon and I have, you know, come to be friends. And more than that, I know that I can knock on his door and he will talk to me about the things that are important to the Peg Center and the Huddle. He will listen to us, he will gather groups for us, and he will come to events like this with his busy schedule and speak to us. He's an ally to our mission, which is social justice, climate justice. He's an ally to LGBTQ rights. He's an ally to gun violence prevention in our community. So I wish you warmly to welcome our Mayor, Sean Reardon.
Thank you, Paula. I feel the same. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be here tonight. Thank you for being here. We all have busy schedules, so I appreciate you taking the time. You know, we gather here today with heavy hearts as we honor the memory of those lost in Uvalde and the communities across the country that have been devastated by gun violence. These tragedies leave wounds that never fully heal. They remind us of our shared responsibility to remember, to act, and to protect. In Newburyport, we're committed to doing everything in our power to keep our community safe. Our police department has undergone rigorous active shooter response training and participates regularly in regional drills with our mutual aid partners. Every officer receives extensive training at the police academy, followed by annual refresher courses and biennial scenario-based drills. We continue to enhance these response protocols, invest in equipment and training, and work closely with our schools and public facilities to ensure we are prepared to act swiftly and effectively if a threat arises. Our educators and school administrators also play a vital role in keeping our children safe. Emergency preparedness plans are in place. Secure entry systems have been implemented, and safety assessments are conducted regularly. Our school resource officer collaborates with school staff to identify risks and foster a culture of trust and reporting. The City Marshal, Matt Simons, and the Superintendent of Schools, Sean Gallagher, remain in close communication about the safety of our schools and our school communities. We are grateful to our hospital and emergency medical personnel. Anna Jake's Hospital and local EMTs are fully engaged in mass casualty training and integrated into the regional emergency response network. They are prepared to scale up operations and coordinate with trauma centers if needed. At City Hall, we remained up to date with the emergency operations plan that ensures coordination with both state and federal agencies. We have strong communication protocols to inform the public swiftly and accurately in an emergency. Our police department also provides citizen response to active shooter events, CRACE training, and regularly conducts workshops with local businesses, churches, and city employees. These efforts continue year-round. We were recently contacted by the wonderful Reverend Rebecca Bryan of the First Religious Society UU, who inquired about offering CRACE training for churches and other local nonprofits. We are now working with Officer Capolo, our certified CRACE trainer at the Newburyport Police Department, to host a training session in City Hall this September. But preparedness isn't just about plans and protocols, it's about people. Prevention begins with connection. We are expanding mental health resources in our schools and throughout our community. Just this month, in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month, we launched the Make It Okay campaign, an initiative aimed at reducing stigma around mental health and encouraging open, compassionate conversations. Our greatest protection lies in community vigilance and care. We urge everyone to check on your neighbors, talk with your kids, and be part of the solution. So what can you do? Stay informed. Sign up for our city's emergency alerts and follow local updates. Volunteer. Get involved, whether it's with our schools, the PEG Center, our mental health task force, or other community initiatives. Talk with your family. Every household should have a plan. Knowing what to do, even in moments of fear, can save lives. Look out for one another. If you see something, say something. Our safety relies on trust, transparency, and shared responsibility. You know, we're not out on the rail trail tonight at the Uvalde Remembrance Garden, but I urge all of you in the coming days, you know, take a moment, visit there. Hopefully the weather will get a little warmer here coming up and you can take walks on the rail trail, but visit there and think about the 21 souls who lost their lives that day and say a little prayer for their families. And again, thank you for all being here tonight. Thank you.
So we wanted to incorporate a piece of poetry into the evening, and we found that Amanda Gorman had written a poem specifically for Uvalde 2 days after it occurred in 2022. So we took the poem and then we asked our poet emeritus, who is so sad that he couldn't be with us tonight, John Burciaga, if he would recite that poem. And also, he's fluent in Spanish, whether he would do a Spanish translation, since in honor of Uvalde, which is mostly Spanish speaking. And he did such a beautiful job, so we're very lucky that we have him on video right now. Thank you. So, good evening, everybody. I am here with my beautiful friend, preacher, poet, and activist, John Burciaga, who is going to honor us with a recitation of an Amanda Gorman poem called The Hymn for the Hurting, which she wrote right after the Uvalde massacre, which happened almost exactly 3 years ago today, on May 24th, 2022. So let's everybody just take a nice deep breath and a pause and listen with your hearts open to John reading both in English and in a beautiful Spanish translation, which he did himself. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. I know that a lot of us know each other, and thank you for inviting my participation in this. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you. But my part today is, as she has said, about a poem by our young national treasure, Amanda Gorman. A poem to be read in English and Spanish. In English, it's titled Hymn for the Hurting. And she uses, you'll notice, the device, the rhyming repetition wonderfully in this. So, first in English, Hymn for the Hurting by Amanda Gorman. Everything hurts. Our hearts shadowed and strange, minds made muddied and mute. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children cannot be children, cannot be. Everything hurts. It's a hard time to be alive and even harder to stay that way. We're burdened to live out these days while at the same time blessed to outlive them. This alarm is how we know we must be altered, that we must differ or die, that we must triumph or try. Thus, while hate cannot be terminated, it can be transformed into a love that lets us live. May we not just grieve, but give. May we not just ache, but act. May our signed right to bear arms never blind our sight from shared harm. May we choose our children over chaos. May another innocent never be lost. And now for our other friends who may see or hear this traducción de un poema de Amanda Gorman titulado Himno de Dolor. Todo duele, nuestros corazones sombreados y extraños, mentes confusas y mudas, llevamos tragedia aterradora y verdadera. Sin embargo, nada de eso es de nuevo. Lo conocemos como hogar, como horror, como patrimonio. Ni siquiera nuestros hijos pueden ser niños, no pueden ser. Todo duele. Es difícil estar vivo y aún más difícil seguir así. Tenemos la carga de vivir estos días, al mismo tiempo tenemos la suerte de sobrevivirlos. Esta alarma es como sabernos que debemos ser alterados, que debemos diferir o morir, que debemos triunfar o intentarlo, Así, aunque el odio no puede terminar, se puede transformar en un amor que nos permita vivir. Que no nos entristezcamos, sino que demos. Que no solo nos duela, sino que actuemos. Que nuestro derecho firmado a portar armas nunca ceguemos nuestra vista ante el daño compartido. Que elijamos a nuestros hijos en lugar del caos. Que otro inocente nunca se pierda. And now I'll repeat that last stanza in English. May we not just grieve, but give. May we not just ache, but act. May our signed right to bear arms never blind our sight from shared harm. May we choose our children over chaos. May another innocent never be lost.
Am I supposed to do anything? No. Ann Haaser, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight for this really important, I think, and special program. I know most people in the room, maybe not a few. My name's Ann Haaser. I am a member of the Huddle program team, and I am also a member of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence Community Council, and a member of a new organization in Massachusetts called Grassroots for Gun Violence Prevention. When we were originally scheduled to have this event outside at the Garden of Remembrance on May 23rd, I posted it on my Facebook page. And a friend of mine, Jane, who lives in Washington State, she's my friend and fellow member of the gun violence prevention movement. She commented on my post, and she said, May 23rd is 11 years since my niece, Veronica Weiss, was murdered in the Isla Vista shooting near University of California at Santa Barbara. I told Jane that we would take a moment to remember Veronica at our event. Then I considered the awfulness of our country's gun violence epidemic, in which the remembrances of school mass shootings overlap each other. So let's take a moment to remember Veronica and to acknowledge the forever grief inflicted on her family. Here are Jane's words. Veronica Weiss, my bright and beautiful 19-year-old niece, was a freshman at UC Santa Barbara on May 23rd, 2014. On that night, she was gunned down in Isla Vista, California, in a senseless rampage by a young man who had anger in his heart and the weapons and ammunition to terrorize an entire community of college students. Veronica is forever 19. Every single day, I am reminded of the day she didn't get to live because someone who shouldn't have had a gun had one. There isn't a day I'm not reminded of something Veronica won't get to experience. Living as a survivor changes you. Gun violence changes you. The survivors of the beautiful souls taken in the 2022 Uvalde shooting are suffering the same fate as my friend Jane. We take it day by day, said Brett Cross, whose 10-year-old son, Lucy Garcia, was among those killed. There are no good days anymore. There are just all right days. Gloria Cazares, mother of 9-year-old Jacqueline, says not being able to hold your daughter, give her a kiss, say I love you, feels like an eternity. And as the days go by, it gets much harder. We just don't ever want the world to forget our kids, she said. They're beautiful, beautiful souls. They have the world in front of them, so much potential, and I just want people to remember our children because they're not here anymore. Jessica Hernandez has alternated between the freeze and flight response since her daughter, 10-year-old Alethea, died inside Robb Elementary School. Each school shooting in the news transports her back to the moment she was told her daughter had not made it out of school alive. Every time I see or hear it, it brings me back to May 24th. We can't move forward when it keeps happening. The lasting traumatic effects of gun violence are not limited to individuals and not limited to mass shootings. Gun violence affects a wide circle around each victim. As Paula said, how she was affected deeply by her friend Gregor's, his son's killing. And the wide circle includes the community, the whole community in which it occurs. Communities like Uvalde and Roxbury each experience what is called collective trauma. Reverend Liz Walker writes in her new book, No One Left Alone. According to research, homicide can leave in its wake up to 10 close relatives who experience acute and chronic long-term grief reactions, as well as friends, neighbors, and coworkers at risk of experiencing severe mental health conditions. There is simply no boundary around trauma. A violent death can impact a casual acquaintance as fully as it impacts a blood relative. The grief, terror, and vulnerability can strike far beyond the geographic boundaries of the crime scene, making everybody in the area a trauma survivor. Chronic collective trauma changes basic assumptions of the world as a safe and predictable place. It also triggers a more subtle and lasting response, collective grief. While grief is unavoidable, a universal response to loss or collective grief impacts an entire community with a sense of powerlessness, the general feeling that little can be done to change a community's plight. As we move into the last part of our Uvalde remembrance, I want to share a little bit about the ofrenda in the front of the room here. When we realized we could not offer this remembrance outside, we decided to create a simple version of an ofrenda. Day of the Dead traditions remember and honor deceased loved ones with ofrendas or altars that families and communities create. Marigolds are the iconic flower of the Day of the Dead. The fragrance of the bright orange and yellow flowers is said to lead souls from their burial place to their family homes. Water is included to represent the purity of the soul, and it's believed that the water will quench the thirst of thirsty spirits to reinvigorate their energies for their journey into the beyond. The most common food offering for the spirits is bread. Fruit is added to delight the soul. According to tradition, at midnight on October 31st, the souls of deceased children come down from heaven and reunite with their families on November 1st. Ana Rodriguez, the mother of Mayte Rodriguez, who was 10 years old when she was killed, tweeted in October of 2022, "We should be choosing her Halloween costume together, but instead I'm making her an ofrenda." So now Debbie and Paula will now lead us into the naming part of the ceremony.
All I ask of you is forever to remember me.
McKenna Lee Elrod, 10. Her smile lit up a room. Salazar, 11. They love to swim and dance.
Miranda Mathis, 11. Her favorite color was purple, and she loved uniforms. Neva Bravo, 10. Neva is remembered for her love of drawing and her athleticism on the softball field. Jose Manuel Flores Jr., 10. He wanted to be a police officer so he could protect others. Xavier Lopez, 10. He was an enthusiastic performer of Colombian dances, a good student whose favorite subject was art. Tess Marie Mata, 10. Tess had a jar full of cash in her purple bedroom, saving money for a family vacation to Disney World. Annabelle Guadalupe Rodriguez, 10, a quiet child who earned a place on the honor roll. Jackie Cazares, 9. Jackie would go out of her way to help anyone. Lucia Garcia, 10. He was the sweetest little boy that I've ever known, his grandfather said. Jace Carmelo Olivanos, 10. He would make his grandparents a pot of coffee every morning. Mate Juliana Rodriguez, 10. Her dream to become a marine biologist started in kindergarten, and she had her heart set on Texas A&M. Jayla Nicole Silguero, 10. She enjoyed dancing and being outdoors. Irma Garcia, 48. She began teaching at the school shortly after marrying her high school sweetheart, Joe, who died of a heart attack 2 days after Irma's death. They left 4 children ranging in age from 13 to 23. Ava Morales, 44, a mom who loved karaoke, hiking, and working out. Ava was an educator for 17 years. Amiri Jo Garza, 10, a vanilla bean and Chick-fil-A lover. Amiri wanted to be a teacher. Alexandria Lexi Andia Rubio, 10. A straight-A student, Lexi enjoyed softball and volleyball. Alethea Ramirez, 10. Alethea loved art and soccer.
All I ask of you is forever to remember you as loving you. Can we all sing that now together? All I ask of you is forever to remember you as loving you.
I think it's fitting that we started tonight's program with the reason that this work is so important. The fact that 21 beloveds should be with their families today. We're now going to turn to the gun violence prevention part of the program. So I'm going to say something that might seem completely unrelated, but it's just something that happened, an experience that I had today. There was a very serious accident yesterday on High Street in Newburyport, and a bicyclist was critically injured. I don't know the circumstances. I'm not passing any judgment on anything. But what it did was it reminded me of the need to be aware of my surroundings when I'm driving, and to be mindful of what's going on all the time, because it's easy to be distracted. I had to drive to Burlington this morning. While I was driving, I was thinking about this and the reasons that it's so important. Of course, I don't want to cause harm to someone, but I also have a duty of care to those around me on the road. In legal terms, duty of care means a legal obligation to act with reasonable care and foresight to avoid causing harm or injury to others. It's a fundamental principle in negligence law, requiring individuals and organizations to exercise care to prevent foreseeable injuries. I was struck by the fact that there's not much duty of care being exercised by our current administration in many ways, but especially in the area of gun violence prevention. To begin, I need to say that in 2024, firearm-related deaths and injuries dropped for the third year in a row. This is no coincidence. It's the result of very intentional study of the causes and solutions to gun violence as a public health issue, and the enactment of policies to reduce it. A concerted, multi-pronged public health approach undertaken by the Biden administration resulted in this decline in gun-related deaths. When Donald Trump was elected in November, everyone in the gun violence prevention movement knew that a pro-gun, pro-NRA president would now occupy the Oval Office. After all, during his first term, Trump addressed the annual NRA convention by saying, "The 8-year assault on your Second Amendment freedoms has come to a crashing end. You have a true friend and champion in the White House." Indeed, they do. On February 7th of this year, I'm going to try not to get too wonky at this point, but there might be some things that are new to you, maybe not. We're, I think, all in this room pretty well informed about what's going on. So on February 7th, Trump issued an executive order directing the federal government to halt existing policies that the Trump administration deemed to be a violation of the constitutional right to bear arms. The order also directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to review all firearms-related actions established by the Biden administration for possible elimination. And those would be the actions that resulted in the decline in gun deaths for the last 3 years. As Doug Hamlin, the NRA's executive vice president and CEO, said at the time, promises made to gun owners are being kept by President Donald J. Trump. And of course, there is Vice President J.D. Vance, who has dismissed gun violence as a fact of life. As Chris Brown, president of Brady, said, what we will see over time is absolutely a rise in gun violence. We will see a rise in homicide. We will see a rise in suicide. We will see a rise in unintentional injury of kids with guns in the home. A few actions already taken by the Trump administration that undermine efforts to save those lives include, as soon as Trump took office, he effectively eliminated the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. On January 21, its website went dark. Established by President Biden in 2023, the office represented the first federal effort to protect Americans from gun-related death and injury in the past 30 years. The office worked to coordinate a government-wide public health approach to gun violence. On February 7th, Trump issued an executive order entitled Protecting Second Amendment Rights, exalting a right to keep and bear arms as the most important right held by Americans. the most important right. Subsequently, in April, per Trump's executive order, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the creation of a Second Amendment task force to protect gun owners against governmental overreach. For too long, the Second Amendment has been treated as a second-class right, Bondi said. No more. She said the Justice Department will use its full might to protect the Second Amendment right. In March, the Department of Health and Human Services removed former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's advisory declaring gun violence a public health crisis. In April, the Justice Department repealed a Biden-era zero tolerance policy to put so-called bad apple gun dealers out of business. The zero tolerance policy revoked the licenses of gun dealers if they willfully sold firearms to prohibited people, such as convicted felons, if they failed to conduct background checks or falsified records. On April 22nd, without warning, the federal administration terminated funding for the Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative at the Department of Justice. This historic federal investment in CVI, which is Community Violence Intervention Programming, has provided over $300 million in grants since 2022 and has played a critical role in lowering gun violence rates around the country. In May, in an act of particular cruelty, the Trump administration removed an exhibit entitled Faces of Gun Violence, which honored victims of gun violence and was on display at the ATF headquarters. The Justice Department had worked directly with survivors to create this exhibit, which was dedicated in April 2024. As Chris Brown, president of Brady, said, for people who are already traumatized enough by gun violence, just the unceremonious lack of care taken here is deeply, deeply troubling. For 100 years, there's been a $200 tax on silencers and strict regulations of this dangerous accessory. Trump's big, beautiful tax bill, now making its way through Congress, eliminates the tax and deregulates silencers, a move that law enforcement opposes. Last week, the Trump administration agreed to permit the sale and possession of devices that let gun enthusiasts convert semi-automatic rifles into weapons that can shoot as fast as machine guns. At the same time, the Trump administration rolls back these important and life-saving gun violence prevention measures. We in the gun violence prevention advocacy movement are also bracing for him to keep his campaign promise to sign a nationwide concealed carry reciprocity law, one of his stated priorities. This law would require every state to respect the concealed carry eligibility standards of other states. It's basically a race to the bottom. And it would essentially negate our strong Massachusetts laws requiring permits and training in order to carry a concealed gun in our state. Finally, when we consider the extent to which Trump favors the gun lobby and gun industry, an interesting fact is that it's actually illegal for Trump himself to own any guns. Because he's a convicted felon, he's barred under federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition. As a result, it has been speculated that he may seek to alter the government's position on the federal felon in possession law, given that he has repeatedly claimed to own guns himself. So stay tuned. There is good news. Which is that there are many, many people and organizations who are still working tirelessly to reduce gun deaths. So it is now my absolute pleasure to introduce someone that I have the highest level of respect for. A friend? She is absolutely here. She is a friend and a fellow collaborator in this battle to end gun violence. Ruth Zachrin spent over 20 years working with youth and adults impacted by domestic and sexual violence before becoming the inaugural executive director of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence in May of 2019. In her 6 years as executive director, she has grown the organization from being an effective but all-volunteer advocacy group to a highly recognized and regarded nonprofit with 5 full-time employees. She's particularly interested in creating models of trauma-informed advocacy and policymaking. Outside of her coalition work, Ruth is an avid knitter and foodie and the proud mom of 2 incredible young adults and a cat, right? I'll also add that she lives quite a distance from Newburyport on the South Shore, so please give a warm welcome to Ruth Zachrin.
So there is always an awkward moment. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're going to bear with me a bit. I've been inspired to make some changes to my remarks this evening, just based on the space that you have all created. And I do want to talk about the power of coming together in coalition to remember. But before I do that, I want to honor all of you for creating a space where memory really takes flight. This has been a beautiful event. The ceremony to remember each of the lives lost in Uvalde, and I talk about this issue every day, was very affecting to me. And the way that you honored from your friend's child to your friend's child or niece to all of these children and the educators who were killed in Uvalde was really beautiful, and I think really speaks to the power of coming together to remember. And so first, I start with appreciation for all of you and the space that has been created here tonight. And I want to thank Ann and Paula and everyone who's a part of the PEG Center for creating the space, for inviting me to be a part of it. This is something I'm honored to be a part of these conversations. I'm honored to be a part of these spaces and to be a part of this community that you are creating, to really remember those lives and to put that memory into action. I'm going to talk a bit more about that momentarily. A bit about the coalition first, that I wanted to start just to frame the conversation, and talked about there's so much work to be done to push back, whether it's on the awfulness that is coming at us from the federal administration. We are lucky to live here in Massachusetts, where we have a lot of things in place, strong laws, sustained investment in community-based solutions, folks doing the work to lift up research and data. But there's always more that we can do, because while our rates of gun violence are lower here in Massachusetts than any other state in the nation, one death is too many. And every shooting is both a crisis and a call to action. And we will not rest until we bring that number down to 0. We will not go back. We will not let the federal administration change the work that we are doing here in Massachusetts. And there are things that we can do to affect that change. And that is what we are dedicated to at the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence, is to affect change. We come at this from a philosophical viewpoint of gun violence is a public health crisis. It is a solvable public health crisis, but it is a public health crisis. It is driven by racial and economic disparity that requires policy change, investing in community-based solutions, and making sure that we are moving research and data forward and listening to that research and data. And when we bring all of those pieces together, we know we can move the needle on this issue. And over the 6 years that I have been honored to lead the coalition, we have gotten very intentional around what that work looks like here in Massachusetts. We think about our work in 4 pillars, which I'll describe to you briefly. One being advocacy. We had our work started with a group of very dedicated volunteers, and I'm looking at my friend Anne, who's been involved in this work right from the get-go, coming together to make sure that we were strengthening our policies here at Massachusetts to keep our communities and our children safe from gun violence. And we still do a tremendous amount of work at the state level, pushing to strengthen our laws, both around the proliferation of and access to guns, as well as root causes of gun violence. We successfully advocated for a piece of legislation that was passed with just hours left in the formal session that really modernized our firearms laws, did things like regulate ghost guns, looked at crime gun data analysis to better understand where the guns are coming from, expanded extreme risk protection order petitioners to ensure that medical and mental health providers could also use that tool, looked at equity in how we fund violence intervention programs, banned guns from polling places, and a whole host of other measures meant to keep us safer from gun violence. And along with that work, we also advocate for budget line items to make sure that member organizations, the folks doing the work in community, have the resources they need to reach as many young people, as many families, and as many communities as possible. So advocacy has always been at the heart of our work. We also do a great deal of education, from workshops, we have curricula that we deliver, we have a film that we screen called This Ain't Normal, which is about youth violence and what solutions look like, to bring people into conversation, because we know that we can make more change when people have the information they need to make that change. We do a lot of organizing work, primarily in communities that have been most impacted by gun violence, but also with a focus on youth, because young people know what they need for their communities to be safe. We just need to listen to them. And we see part of our work at the coalition is to make sure that the listening is happening and that young people can really lead what change looks like. And lastly is coalition building. The heart of our name is the word coalition. I'm honored to say that we have 120 member organizations from across the Commonwealth, as well as national partners like Brady and Giffords in every town, who are involved in the work of speaking in one unified voice to call for change. But we also make sure that we show up for our member organizations to support the work they are doing in community as well. And coalition building is about taking action, but it is also about remembering what all of you are doing here this evening. And I want to speak a bit more about the power of memory, because I do think that's very much what drives me in this work. And I want to share with you a memory that has really created the foundation for how I think about my work with the coalition and what prevention means to me. As Anne mentioned, I spent many years working with survivors of domestic and sexual violence, all the program models from shelter to community-based, court-based, rape crisis centers, all of the program models. And of course, the intersection of that work with guns and gun violence is significant. Can't think about violence prevention and intervention without thinking about the role that guns play. But for the 11 years that I worked in Brockton, we were the program that supported children in the immediate aftermath of a domestic violence homicide. And while not all TV homicides are perpetrated with a gun, so many of them are. We live in a country where upwards of 75 women are shot and killed by a current or former intimate partner every single month. And the community that has experienced the highest rate of domestic violence homicide is Brockton. We had a 5-day period of time where there were 3 domestic violence homicides. Needless to say, it was incredibly traumatic for the entire community. The folks who were directly victimized, but as has been poignantly pointed out, it is not just those who are directly affected by the shooting who experience the trauma of gun violence. This was communal trauma. There's a lot that happened in Brockton around these homicides, but the memory that really sticks out for me was working with the children and the aftermath of their mother being shot and killed by her former boyfriend. And the grandparents were then taking these kids in, and these kids were just a little bit younger than the children we are memorializing this evening. They couldn't bring themselves to tell the kids what had happened. They didn't have the words. But somebody needed to sit and talk to these kids. And they asked me to do that. And that's what I did, because somebody needed to talk to these kids. They needed somebody to tell them. And you can imagine that memory is seared into my brain. And I remember thinking, as I'm looking at these little kids and trying to explain to them why they weren't going to see their mom again, this shouldn't be happening. There really should be something we can do to prevent this. This should not be the narrative. And that's what really brought me to be thinking about, I can do trauma response until the end of time, and it's incredibly valuable work, but I wanted to stop the trauma from happening. I wanted to move from response to prevention. I wanted to think about policies and systems that are not working to keep people safe. And what do we need to do to change those policies and systems? And to this day, I carry that memory with me as an inspiration for why we are in this work. As I think we are carrying the memories of these children as to why we are here doing it together this evening. And now I want to go back to talking about coalition, because I do think there's a particular power in coming together in coalition to remember. I think it's how we build community. I think it's how we have a shared experience. I think it's also how we show those who survive these traumatic incidents that people do still care, that people do still remember. One thing that's been powerful for me in my role now is when I hear from survivors after doing an action at the State House or something very public, without fail, I'll hear from someone who will say, I thank you for doing this, because somebody is fighting the fight. Somebody remembers my child, or my loss, or my trauma. And I think what you are all doing here tonight by coming together in coalition to remember is responding to that need for folks to still come together and remember and hold those memories, hold those children, hold those who have been lost, and hold those who have survived, but survived without trauma. There is power in coming together in coalition to remember. And then there is also power in coming together in coalition to turn that memory, to use that memory, to feed off of that memory, to take action. And I know that's what tonight is also about. Those memories help me stay centered and grounded in this work. They help me stay motivated in spite of the fact that we have so much harm that is coming from the federal administration. There's a reason why every day we all get up and think there's change to be made, and I'm going to show up for that. And that is part of what keeps me going. And I think that's also the power of coming together in coalition to remember, is that we can support each other in taking that action. That will continue to be our work at the coalition, is to honor the memory and then take action. We have a lot of work ahead of us right now. Here in Massachusetts, we have made great gains. The legislation that I mentioned that we got passed this past summer earned us an A grade from the Gifford Center for Gun Violence Prevention for the strength of our gun laws, and I'm pretty proud of that. We do have folks who are working to repeal that law, however, and we are not going to let them. We will not go back We will not be told what our laws can or cannot look like. We know what we need to do to keep our community safer, to keep our kids safer, to keep on working to ensure that we bring the number of gun deaths in Massachusetts down to 0. So at the Coalition, we are organizing, we are coming together in coalition to make sure that we build the infrastructure we need to protect this legislation. And when we get to November 3rd, 2026, that we will prevail in making sure that we keep this law, this life-saving, critically important law, on the books in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We will continue to work in community. Anne talked about the threats to funding that we are seeing from the federal level. We are working to make sure that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts continues to show up for the work of community violence intervention, continues to fund this critically important work, but also continues to listen to the communities most impacted by gun violence, continues to listen to young people and their wisdom, so that the actions we take, the changes that we make, are fully informed by those who have been most impacted. And we are also going to work to move research forward. We're doing some work right now with the BU School of Public Health to really look at disparities in resource allocation by municipality in the Commonwealth to make sure that Springfield, which has a much higher rate of gun violence than any other community in the Commonwealth, gets the same level of resources that Boston does. So they have the programs and the responses they need to reduce the rate of gun violence there. And the way that we will do all of this work is in coalition, by bringing folks together from lots of different communities, from lots of different walks of life, who come into this conversation maybe in many different ways, so that we can speak in one unified voice, to call for change, to hold our electeds accountable, to bring more people in, but also to remember and to hold the memory of those who have been lost as a constant guiding light in the work of making change. I thank you again for having me.
I hope that you can all stay when we're finished, because we have beautiful refreshments. Ruth will be here, the artists will be here, the musicians, and we want you to look at the quilts and everything, so do stay. The final part of our program involves artists, and the Peg Center is just so thrilled to have that representation about difficult subjects, because I find artists courageous. Courageous, not because they're standing on the front lines necessarily, but because emotionally they are. And so we're going to watch a video. The quilt artist, Burciaga, whose quilt is back there, lives out in Kalamazoo, but we found her online, and she is doing a program. She's a quilter, an artist, and activist using fabric as her medium to spotlight the ongoing crisis of gun violence in the United States. In this short video that we made together, Erin talks about how quilting can become a form of protest, remembrance, and community healing. Her project is called, I don't have it written down here, which is really silly of me. So what she's doing is, starting in 2024, this quote represents January, February, March, April mass shootings. The black marks are wounded and the red are killed. She has invited other artists around the country to take squares and do them and then send them back, and she puts them together with a quilt artist. She calls a long arm artist, who inscribes on the back of her quilts a saying on each one. Is this what freedom feels like? It's on the back of this one. January through April 2024 is a double bed size. She said the following segment that she's working on the next 4 months is already a king. So it's just how artists see things. They might look like just marks on a piece of fabric, but they mean so much more. And so let's hear from Erin herself by video. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Paula Estey, and I'm the Executive Director of the PEG Center Huddle, and I am so delighted to be in conversation here tonight with Erin Cabrera, who's a fiber artist from Kalamazoo, Michigan, who we are delighted to have a very intense, wonderful quilt at two events in May. May 23rd at our Garden of Remembrance ceremony for the victims of Uvalde, Texas, and on all gun violence victims, and on May 28th at Central Congregational Church in Newburyport. Her quilt will be on display during our Huddle meeting called Forget Me Not, so we're really, really happy to be here. And I have spoken to Erin before, and I've seen her a lot on her Instagram page. She's a great speaker and a wonderful artist. So we're just going to start by asking you, Erin, have you always been a fiber artist?
No, it's a pretty recent hobby for me. I picked it up around COVID, like a lot of people did, pick up a hobby. And I always wanted to learn how to sew. I never really knew how, but I just decided, hey, I've got a lot of time. I really want to try. And I was going through quite a bit of grief at the time. I'd lost my grandpa and I'd lost my dog in pretty short succession. And I needed something I could just kind of throw myself into. So I picked up sewing, and it was something that really took a lot of focus, which helped me process my grief because it gave me something to kind of suspend my thoughts into for a while and just kind of focus on what I was doing. And if I just went up into my sewing room and I just cried in fabric for 30 minutes, then that was fine too. And out of that just came a practice that I kept, and I really enjoy it.
Wow. You know, it's so funny because the other day somebody actually said to me, we need to have a sob in, a place where we can just go and cry. So why gun violence? I mean, if you're already in the weeds with feeling losses, why turn to gun violence? Have you personal experience with it? Am I allowed to ask that? Sure.
Yeah, you can ask that. I don't have personal experience with it, but I am part of the generation, that is the first generation that had to deal with school shootings, had to go through school shooter drills, and then I grew up to be a hero pro, and I had to run those school shooter drills myself. And I very distinctly remember, especially like one specific incident where I had 3 children I was in charge of, and I just remember sitting there and thinking to myself, as we're trying to do this drill, I had a child, I worked in a middle school, and this child, every time he would get upset, he would kind of just drop to the ground and sob loudly. And then I had another little girl that was in a wheelchair, and then another little girl that needed quite a bit of direction. And I'm just sitting there with these 3 kids, trying to get them out the door, thinking to myself that if this was real, if this wasn't a drill, I'm gonna have to leave him behind. I'm gonna have to leave this poor child behind, and I'm gonna have to live with that the rest of my life. And I'm going to have to pick up these little girls and run as fast as I can. And that's the only option that I have to actually get through this and have somebody maybe make it out alive. And that was a really formative thing for me. And I focused on gun violence because it feels like it's this issue that's kind of hung over my head my entire life. Like, I just feel like something is about to happen, something's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And it's not getting any better. And we just keep thinking that we can run away from it. Like, I know my parents moved to a different town after I graduated high school because my high school started to get a little rough in their opinion. And they wanted my brother to go somewhere else. And I hear about the town that I live in, like, oh, it's getting a little rough there, isn't it? And we just keep thinking we can move away from it or distance ourselves, and we don't address it. So I wanted to address it in some way by creating something that would really show people how expansive this is. It's not just when you hear the big events that occur, the big incidents on the news, it's every single day. And I really wanted to make that clear so that we could maybe start actually working on this.
You know, the PEG Center Huddle feels the same way because when Uvalde happened 3 years ago, the anniversary was coming up almost in a week.
we have somebody on our strategic team who's been in the gun violence prevention movement for 13 years, and she's educating us that these things don't go away, just as you were saying. They just don't. And so we turned our attention to Uvalde because it was huge. It was an unbelievable tragedy, but we also dedicated and committed ourselves to hanging in there for the long term, even though we don't know what that means in terms of what another community might mean. But in her opinion and in her advice, it doesn't go away. And if a community experiences a mass shooting, it is there indelibly forever. So I want to turn now to this huge project that you have undertaken. I'd love to know what the name of it is, what the scope of it is, and what your vision is for it.
Yeah. So the name of the project is called En Masse. And each quilt, so there will be 6 quilts by the time I'm done with it. It spans 2 years, and each quilt is 4 months. So the first quilt that will be hanging with you is called Number 1, Is This What Freedom Feels Like? And across the quilt is stitched into it, Is This What Freedom Feels Like? Over and over and over again. And I chose that specifically because it's one of the arguments we hear most frequently against gun violence prevention is, well, it's my freedom, it's my right to have this. And I want to know, does this feel like freedom to all of us? Does it feel free to have to worry about if you're going to send your kid to school with a backpack and they're going to come back in a body bag? Does that feel free? I think we should question that. So each of the quilts in the series are going to have a phrase like that stitched onto it to kind of ask us to dig deeper and think more critically about this, because it seems like each time an incident occurs, we have a couple of days where we're angry and we question and we think about it, but then we just kind of move on and we don't think any deeper. And I want this project to give us the opportunity to think deeper. So my goal is that when I'm finished with it, it will be a traveling exhibit that can go places and people can see it in person and kind of have the moment to sit there and think, is this what freedom feels like? Is this what I want? Is this the kind of country I want to live in? And hopefully, through having to wrestle with those questions themselves, it'll start to change the minds.
So when does the quote start in terms of data? And when we are looking at your quote, what are we actually looking at?
So the quilts, it starts in January 2024, and the quilt that you have is January 2024 to April 2024, and they span 4 months from there. And what the data is it's all from the, what's it called? The gun violence, I'll have to think about it, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. The Gun Violence Archive is what it's called. And all of the data is every single day for the entire year. And it goes back until, I think, 2014. You can look at data for every mass shooting that's occurred since 2014 is when they started collecting this data. And it's any shooting that has 4 or more victims involved in the shooting. So each block, and I can show you what a block looks like. This is an individual block that depicts this individual incident, and the navy here, this indicates somebody was injured, and the red indicates that somebody died as a result of the incident.
And you're doing, I noticed on your Instagram post that you have people researching mass shootings for you. Is that correct?
I have people that are participating by making the blocks.
Oh, they're making the blocks. Wow.
So I have 52 quilters, so a quilter for each week who is helping me with 2025. And right here I have part of that quilt. So all of these blocks here were made by different quilters from all around the United States, all based off of the design that I created. It's a pretty simple improv.
Each block is a mass shooting.
Each block is a mass shooting, yes. And then put all together shows us, this is just January 2025 that I pulled it.
So if we So there's 3 quarters in a year, you're gonna do 2024 and 2025. So there will be 6, these are 6 quilts at the end of this, but I remember talking to you before that you don't know how big each one is gonna be. Because it depends on how many shootings are gonna happen in that year, or have happened in that year.
That's true, yeah. The one that you have is about 70 by 90 inches, and that is roughly a twin-sized quilt, or like a twin-sized blanket. If you think about like a twin-sized bed, it's that size. And then the quilt that's hanging behind me that I'm working on, this is June and July. No, it's May and June, and it'll be July and August as well. And so far for May and part of June, it's almost the same size as the quilt that I sent you. That's 4 months.
Oh my gosh, Aaron.
So that will probably end up being a queen or a king by the time I'm done with it.
So what I love about this project, and we'll kind of wrap it up in a moment or two, but is that it takes a creative concept, which our organization is so about, art and activism. And so many people ask us, how can art affect activism? How can it affect the culture that we're in? And so you took an artistic concept, but then you involved other people. It's an educational tool. It will, I mean, we unwrapped it together as a team, and we were completely moved by it. And the more this shows, the more people will understand the truth of this tragedy that is our nation, and perhaps and hopefully do something about it. So what I'd like to ask you as kind of a parting shot is, where would you like us to put our energies? Is there a favorite organization of yours? Is there a place where you would like us to put our money, our time, our talents?
Your own community, whatever your own community is doing to address the issues in your community, that's where we can do the most work. I know my community has, over time, it has become more of an issue in my community, and there are starting to be organizations that are popping up. And that's amazing. And if there's not an organization in your community, maybe it's time for you to start it. Maybe that's where your energy needs to go. Because nationally, there are some really amazing organizations that do address this, and that's wonderful. But the most impact that you can have is at home. So if there's something in your community that already exists, go volunteer with them. Go see how you can get involved. If there's not, then see if there's, a couple people in your neighborhood that want to try to get together, like you go to book club, and see if you can do something around this issue in your neighborhood, because that's where it really starts, and that's where you can have the most impact.
So Erin, has Kalamazoo experienced mass shooting?
We have not experienced a mass shooting. Oh no, actually we did. We had our first mass shooting last December. Last December we had our first mass shooting, yep.
There's a consciousness there. We have not, and it's going to be what we ask of the people who are speaking at these events to address is, even if it hasn't, what are we doing to prevent it? What are we going to do if it happens? So I admire the hell out of what you're doing. I love it. It's moving. It's effective, and I thank you so much for just putting your time and talent toward it, and for sending it to us. We are deeply grateful and honored. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me to have it out there where people can see it and learn from it and experience it. Thank you.
Terrific.
Julie, you've been so patient. It's not last but least at all, but I'm so grateful that you're here showing your beautiful quilts. Julie Neu. I was introduced to her by Anne. I'm going to read a little bio. Julie Brown Neu has been quilting for more than 25 years, since deciding after her college graduation that she needed a hobby. She began with traditional hand-quilted bed quilts and evolved to her current art, which which includes a series of pieced quilts inspired by Islamic tile designs, and a series of art quilts with statements called her Protest series. Julie is also the creator of the Victims Quilt Project, a series of memorial quilts remembering victims of major mass shootings in the United States. Her work has appeared in galleries in the book Amish Quilts, The Adventure Continues, as well as in the Boston Globe and the Quilt Life and Quilters newsletter magazines. She's also the illustrator of a self-published children's book entitled Ravaging Rio. Julie splits her time between Boston and the Berkshire Hills with her family, her husband, teenage daughter, and a black lab named Layla. I'm so grateful that you brought your quilts here tonight, and I hope that people stay and talk to you after. We'll move everything out of the way after you speak, and so that we can. So please welcome Julie Neu.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here tonight. It's really an honor to be a part of this event, and thank you again, Paula, for inviting me. So, as Paula mentioned, I've been quilting for quite a long time, and I quilted, thank you, thank you. I made traditional hand-quilted bed quilts for over 20 years, and that was just fine. And I would have happily stayed making traditional quilts, except I received a project from the Muse. It was 2016. It was a couple of days after the shooting at the Orlando nightclub. And for those of you who aren't quilters, I'll tell you that the minute a disaster happens, whether natural or human-made, quilters start sending quilts. So within days, there were quilts going to Orlando to comfort the victims' families. And I was thinking about what I might also do. When I heard a voice say to me, "No, you should make the quilt for the victims instead. Who's making a quilt for them?" And I heard this voice in my head, but it didn't quite sound like my voice, so I actually turned around to look to see if there was somebody in my house. Thank God there wasn't. But I'm not sure that arguing with the Muse in my head was much better, and I did argue with her. I was like, "No, thank you very much. I am not interested in this project. This sounds incredibly difficult to do. It sounds very emotionally difficult. I'm not interested." But she won the argument, as I suspect generally she does, and I was still like a petulant teenager, because I was like, "Well, fine, but you are going to have to help me." And she did, because I stood up from my machine, which is where I was, sitting and thinking about this, and I grabbed a pencil, and in 15 minutes, I had designed the Victims Quilt Project. I had done the research that I needed to do to find the names of the victims of mass shootings. I had designed the blocks and figured out how much fabric I needed. So what I did was I spent then 15 months making a block with the name of each victim of a major mass shooting event. So I chose to do events where more than 10 people died at once, starting with the Columbine shooting in 1999. And I designed the blocks based on the flag for the state where the shooting occurred. So I spent 15 months sewing together the blocks, and I ended up with a quilt that was almost king size, about 112 inches square. And I left it unbound because I wanted to demonstrate that this was a problem that didn't have a solution, and that there would be more names to add. What I didn't realize was how quickly that would happen, because the Las Vegas shooting happened 9 days after I finished that quilt, which was followed very quickly by a shooting in a Texas church. And so within 2 weeks, I had 85 more names to add. And I realized that if I kept doing what I was doing and just adding more names to what was already really heavy and unwieldy, the quilt would never see the light of day because it would just be too difficult to display. So I took the thing apart, took out every seam, and re-sewed it into individual banners for each shooting event. And I now have 17 quilts. I'm 2 behind. And because I didn't start Uvalde quilts until Paula reached out to me. Because I couldn't. My own daughter, who turned 13 2 weeks ago, is the same age as those kids. She was in 3rd grade. She hurt, and I couldn't bring myself to go out. When I first started this project, I worked for years without having any idea what I was going to do with it. And in the fall of 2018, I had sort of like a little bit of an oh shit moment when I realized that the 20th anniversary of the Columbine shooting, which was the first quilt that I made, was in April of 2019. And I knew those quilts needed to be on display. And so I started calling around. I live in Arlington, and I reached out to the Arlington Center for the Arts, and Pam Shanley, who's the operations manager, said, okay, fine, we'll figure it out. Of course, they had an exhibit already planned for their gallery. So we turned the hallway outside of the center into a makeshift gallery, and we hung the quilts there from April to September of 2019. And then when I was pulling them down, the director said, hey, do you want to be on the board? So it wasn't until the opening of that exhibit when I finally sort of realized why I was doing this project. A woman walked up to me that night and she said, I am Ross's mother. And because I've spent so much time with the names of each of these victims, I knew who she meant. Her son died at the Virginia Tech shooting. And it meant so much to her that a fairly random person in Massachusetts was remembered in Birch, Huddle. I've also heard from, I've emailed with a woman who lost her best friend in Las Vegas. I've heard from other people who've been touched in some way by these horrific events. And so it's recognizing that this opportunity to continue to remember these lives that have been lost, cut so short, in the case of Uvalde, is the reason for this. It allows me to remember these people long past the moments of the sort of couple of days of thoughts and prayers and when we're all told to move on. So I brought with me today 5 quilts, the 2 banners hanging behind me. This is the Parkland shooting and the Uvalde quilt. Massacre map is a vintage map that I printed out on fabric. To me, it's reminiscent of the U.S. maps in school classrooms, like from my elementary school classroom. And the hearts represent the locations for the events that I've covered in the project. The size of the hearts indicates the size of the loss. This one up here is called In Our Sights. And I made it a couple of days after the shooting in Las Vegas. It is actual pages from the New York Times coverage of the shooting, sandwiched under a sheer fabric and then sewn down. And I used the pages themselves because I wanted to show the passage of time with no solution to this very preventable problem. Because as the paper rips and wrinkles and yellows, it will show the passage of time. This last one over here is called bullet holes. Because, like the artist we just heard from, I wanted to represent a little bit more of the sort of real scope of the devastation of mass shootings. And so I call this a quilted infographic, because each strip of fabric represents a year. The darker fabrics separate the decades. And each hole represents a person who died in a mass shooting in that year. And they are actual holes in the quilt. I sort of sewed around a circle and then cut out the center of them to create actual holes, so that you really sort of feel the absence. And there are 874 holes. As I mentioned, the Victims Quilt Project now includes 17 quilts. I have 2 to do, containing the names of 364 people. And it, unfortunately continues to grow, and I will continue to make quilts as long as I need to. I really would like to not. But this is my effort to remember and to honor those people whose lives have been lost in such a very preventable way. It's my refusal to let these shootings pass from memory after those few days of thoughts and prayers. And I do want to thank you for having me as a part of this remembrance event tonight.
Turn the lights on, and I just, in my Buddhist study group at the end, we often chant, and then at the very end, we clap like hell. So, because we did it. Thank you so much.